Good morning, DrupalCon Europe. Hello, everyone. I'm based in the United States, so it is currently 5 o'clock in the morning, but I'm excited to talk to you all about the 3 approaches to building your next Drupal site. So a little bit about me. My name is Lerone Walker. I work for a company called Bounteous. I'm a senior director within the Drupal practice there. And you can find me across the internet at either Lerone Walker or Lerone. Most likely, if you see Lerone or Lerone Walker, it's probably me. And as I mentioned, I work for a global digital agency called Bounteous, and we're heavily involved in the Drupal community. We're also hiring. So if you're looking for a new opportunity or you want to learn more about us, feel free to visit our website, bounteous.com, or you can reach out to me and we can chat more about what we have available. So this talk is going to be split into 3 parts. We're going to start immediately into the question of how to approach Drupal builds. We're going to go through some questions that you can ask to determine the best approach for your organization. And then we're going to wrap it up with some common pitfalls to avoid. So let's jump into how to approach Drupal builds. So do any of these scenarios sound familiar? You're trying to gain operational efficiencies by not waiting weeks to update the homepage. Or maybe there's a desire to put more control in the hands of marketing with less reliance on IT because your content is ready, but you need to coordinate with developers to add it to the site. Or maybe you have an amazing story to tell, but it's difficult to share that compelling story on your current site. If any of these scenarios sound familiar, don't worry, you are not alone. So we're going to shift our focus today to talk about how we use technology to solve business problems. And by defining the problem clearly, we can determine the correct architecture. Choosing a fully decoupled or headless approach because it's cool, maybe fun, but may not be the best decision. The business needs and requirements will ultimately drive you to the correct solution. So let's start by taking a high-level look at the different approaches. So we like to refer to these approaches of the spectrum of approaches to Drupal. So on the left side of the spectrum, you have out-of-the-box Drupal. So this is the out-of-the-box experience you get with Drupal. On the right side of that spectrum is a fully decoupled approach, which is fully separating the Drupal content administration from the display layer or what the user sees. And then right in the middle is the progressively decoupled approach, which takes the best of both worlds, where some content is rendered by Drupal and the rest through APIs. And what we typically see is the ends of the spectrum are clearly defined, either Drupal rendered or fully decoupled. However, the middle, that progressively decoupled option, tends to not be as clear. And we're going to dive in a little deeper in the future slides of what these approaches mean and some more details there. But I at least wanted to start by highlighting what 3 approaches could look like. So, Lerone, that sounds great, but what are some of the questions that we should be asking as we're trying to determine the best approach for our organization? So let's start with these. What business problems are you solving? Where is your organization in terms of digital maturity? What resources and skills do you need to build and maintain for your website? What out-of-the-box Drupal features are important to your business? And we're actually going to dive in a little deeper into some of these questions. So the first one, what is the business problem you're trying to solve? So maybe your Drupal site is powering multiple experiences, web, digital signage, a mobile application. This could be a case where you're fully decoupled or where the web experience is Drupal rendered and the other experiences are progressively decoupled. If your content or marketing teams work independently and they don't want to be tied to code releases, Drupal rendered is a great solution to move quickly and free up IT to focus on other objectives. And if your Drupal site works as an API-driven external commerce solution like uh, Commerce Tools or Elastic Path, leaning into a progressively decoupled or fully decoupled approach may make more sense. So that second question, where is your organization in terms of digital maturity? So supporting the platform is vital to success. I think we can all agree on that. The more complicated the platform, the harder it is to support. So if your organization has not made a significant effort to create content, the simpler solution may be better. So for instance, if you have a content editor or a site builder that spends a couple of hours, 1 day per month editing or adding content, a simple solution like Drupal rendered may be best. However, if you have a team of content editors that need flexibility to create content in varied and creative ways and to send that content to multiple channels, a solution like decoupled Drupal may be better. So that next question, what resources and skill sets do you need? So maybe your team doesn't really know Drupal theming or React, but they have solid CSS skills. A Drupal rendered solution using Aqua's Site Studio may be best because you don't really need to understand the Drupal theming layer. If your internal team has a particular skill set that can also make one option more appealing than the other, that's also can be a consideration. So sometimes we run across teams that have like strong React capabilities or Vue or Angular. That may be a deciding factor. And I think it's also important to consider not just what skills your team has now, but also strategically what skills your team will gain in the future. So, which Drupal features are important to your organization? One of the biggest advantages of using a platform like Drupal is you are building on top of features and functionality the Drupal community has already built. So, not just what's included in Drupal core, but you also have the tens of thousands of community supported modules. Leveraging pre built functionality makes the build go faster. It's less of an investment, it's easier to maintain, and you don't have to create a custom solution. I see a lot of wins there. So, when you build a decoupled site, you are building a custom front end for your website. So, by going decoupled, you're either giving up the functionality that Drupal already has, or you needed to build that functionality yourself. So an example that we typically see when we're talking about decoupled is content preview. Drupal provides this out of the box for a coupled site, but if you decouple and you need content preview, you need to build your own solution. So it's important. So as you're weighing different features, consider what matters more to your organization. So let's jump back to this chart here and go a little bit deeper into these three approaches. So going back to the spectrum, starting back on the left-hand side with Drupal rendered, again, this is plain Drupal, the most straightforward implementation that consists of building out templates for each content type. It also tends to be the easiest for content editors, so they can add a node for a specific content type, fill out the fields, and publish the content. But it's also the least flexible. You gain more flexibility by introducing something like Layout Builder, which is a solution that allows content editors to break free from a rigid template where all content is displayed the same way and instead build unique components. However, with that flexibility comes a more complex administrative UI. There is also a low-code solution tool like Aqua's Site Studio that provides more flexibility to create component-based experiences using their drag-and-drop solution. And with Site Studio, you can style your components within the UI, so there's no need to understand or modify the Drupal theme layer. We talked about this a little earlier. However, there is extra work to understand that approach. And if it's used infrequently, adding content may take longer than just using plain Drupal. So if we jump all the way to the right to that fully decoupled solution, fully decoupled is the new hotness. Maybe it's not the new hotness, but it's still the current hotness. More and more clients are exploring this approach, which serves up Drupal data via API calls instead of relying on Drupal to render pages. And with fully decoupled, you have complete control over the content presentation, and you aren't limited by the CMS presentation layer. It's also easier to compose and present content for multiple systems like commerce platforms. Performance can be typically better because you're using those Drupal APIs, and they can reach out to like a static generated site that's using maybe a tool like Gatsby. And there's some security advantages as well by going fully decoupled. However, with great flexibility comes great responsibility. You need to build the presentation layer so you don't lose out on functionality that the CMS has already built. So again, going back to that live preview example, instead of that being out of the box, that would be something you need to implement yourself. So if we go to the middle solution in this chart, progressively decoupled is the approach that lies between coupled and headless. Instead of solely rendering Drupal or only using Drupal to return data via APIs, this approach combines both solutions. It can be decoupled where it makes sense, but also take advantage of Drupal's rendering capabilities where needed. This solution is the best and not so best of both worlds. It's the best because you can take advantage of Drupal's rendering while layering parts of the experience that are decoupled. In more complicated digital experience platforms, you can choose to decouple certain systems like commerce, but keep Drupal coupled. Ultimately, you have great flexibility, and you also have the ability to highly leverage Drupal. The not so best comes in with complexity of the implementation. It definitely increases when you're looking at this solution. So everyone on the team needs to understand how to work with the different pieces of the system. So for example, content editors need to know how to add, edit, and preview content. Designers need to know which components can be used and where they can be used. Developers need to know how to affect rendering in multiple ways. The process to make a change is different depending on where the site change is. So for example, some content may be published by content editors in the admin, while other content may require a code release. So we've looked at the three approaches. We've looked at some questions that you can ask. What has Bounteous used as their approach? What approach did we take with Bounteous.com? So we recently went through some updates to our existing web platform. We already had an existing Drupal 8 site, and the implementation was one that we were happy with. The original implementation was coupled, and it used Layout Builder to give our marketing team flexibility to build out content. But after a couple of years on the new platform, we wanted an updated look and feel, which included a lot of complex animations. We were looking to update a few key areas of the website rather than going with a complete redesign. And that's I want to make sure I call that out because, there are scenarios where you want to gradually roll out a redesign and maybe not do the whole thing in one fell swoop. And that was the scenario that we were in. So some of the questions we asked ourselves when we were redesigning Bounteous.com was, does the team have deep knowledge of React and Gatsby or other relevant frameworks? And for us, yes, we have solid experience and knowledge with Drupal and a couple technologies. So that was a check. We also asked who will be adding and maintaining content on the site and what are their skills? Fortunately for us, we have an excellent marketing team and development teams in-house that are able to care and feed the site. So another check there. The next question we asked was, how quickly does this project need to be completed? And probably unsurprisingly, if anybody's worked in the agency space, there was an extremely tight timeline with this one. And so we knew that whatever the solution that we set forth, it needed to be one that allowed us to react quickly and to move very swiftly. The last question we asked was, what matters more to your organization? Is it okay to rebuild features that Drupal provides? And in our case, executing the design vision was more important than using out-of-the-box Drupal. So with all those questions asked and answered, we landed on the progressively decoupled solution, which is the middle part of that spectrum. So the last segment here in the last few minutes that we have, let's talk about some common pitfalls to avoid. And we'll use some real examples here. We will not say the client names, but we'll use some real examples that we've seen in our work with some of our clients. So the first one is decoupling too much. So we had a Fortune 500 client build a platform that combined CMS and commerce. Drupal was used in a coupled fashion. However, the commerce platform was completely decoupled. This made it easy to mix the commerce content with the marketing content. The challenge, however, was implementing all the pieces needed for commerce. Product category and product details were easy to implement, but the challenges were with the shopping cart flow and payment functionality. They required tight communication with various platforms, and this was causing a variety of issues. So, our solution in this circumstance was helping the client by coupling the shopping cart and payment functionality. So, once the user was ready to check out, the commerce platform took over. So what this did is it took advantage of the already built and well-tested commerce functionality, and it also made use of other commerce features and modules that easily addressed other project requirements. We didn't need to build that from scratch. It was already built into the platform. So again, the more you decouple, the more you need to customize a solution or build. So in short, based on the current and future plans, the architecture that we ended up going with right-sized their decoupling. It was the best of both worlds. Next question or next pitfall to avoid is failing to have the correct stakeholders involved. So we had another client of ours ask us to do a discovery audit with the main question being, what should the architecture of the system be? The initiative was driven almost exclusively by the IT team. And as we dug deeper into the requirements and doing stakeholder interviews, it became clear that the marketing team was not even being consulted. So the primary drivers and considerations were all IT focused. So making decisions around decoupled versus other approaches, looking at content publishing flows that centered around IT delivering changes, marketing considerations like content workflow and personalization and journey orchestration were ignored. So the solution for us in this circumstance was for any digital experience platform project, you need to pull many different point of views. IT, marketing, legal, analytics, and more are needed. So even if it's just, quote, just a website, you need to take in consideration a wide variety of wants and needs to make sure that the architecture you choose supports the organization now and into the future. So looking at a small slice of requirements for one group may lead you to choosing a coupled approach, but when all groups are considered, having a headless solution in place may be the better option. And the last example here is failing to plan for the future. This is the last pitfall. So in this case, a client asked us to assess their platform, and they're looking to expand Drupal beyond just being a website. They're looking to start using Drupal to really engage their customers using personalization and other channels. And the solution here was, I think we can all agree that Drupal is a powerful tool, and you can build anything you can imagine in a lot of different ways. And the way you choose to build Drupal and how you build that content dictate how flexible the system will be to accommodate changes in the future. Unfortunately, in this case, we had to tell the client that their Drupal platform just was not built to support their needs without heavy refactoring. We needed new content types and entities. We needed to make sure that the content could be reused across different channels. The page layouts need to be adjusted so that they could better accommodate personalized content. So with a little bit of planning and a different approach, a lot of this rework could have been avoided. So the learning here is that in any platform redesign or replatform, to make sure that we're planning for the future and that we're accommodating, that we're being accommodating as we're planning out that architecture. So those are the three things we're going to highlight today: the different approaches to building Drupal builds, questions that you can ask to determine your approach, and common pitfalls to avoid. Thank you so much. Be sure to go and take surveys for all the sessions. I know we're probably at time here, so if there are any questions that I don't get to, feel free to reach out on social and we'll be sure to follow up.